You're in a room full of people who are celebrating something you did. They're clapping, smiling, telling you how amazing you are, and you feel nothing. Not ungrateful, not cold, just unmoved. You smile, you say thank you, you play the part. But inside, there's a quiet flatness, a sense that none of this changes anything about who you are or what you know to be true. People think you're confident, self-assured, maybe even a little distant. But that's not quite it. You're not indifferent to kindness. You appreciate when someone notices your work, but you don't need it the way others seem to. You don't check your phone every 5 minutes hoping for a text. You don't post something and wait anxiously to see who responds. You don't collapse when someone criticizes you, and you don't soar when someone praises you. You just continue. People often assume that those who don't need constant validation are emotionally detached, cold, maybe even arrogant. But that's rarely the full truth. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes they've spent so long validating themselves internally that external approval feels almost redundant, like being offered food when you've already eaten. Psychologically, this reflects what researchers call internal locus of evaluation. It's when your sense of worth comes primarily from within rather than from external sources. Dr. Carl Rogers described this as a characteristic of fully functioning people, those who trust their own experience more than the judgments of others. What if not needing validation isn't coldness? What if it's clarity? When someone compliments you, something interesting happens. Most people feel a rush, a warmth, a moment of relief that they're acceptable, valued, seen. But you feel acknowledgement, gratitude maybe, but not dependency. Your chest doesn't tighten waiting for approval. Your mind doesn't spiral when it doesn't come. There's a steadiness inside you, a baseline sense of self that doesn't fluctuate wildly based on what others think. It's not that you don't care what people think. You do. You just don't need them to think well of you in order for you to think well of yourself. This doesn't happen overnight. It starts somewhere, usually early. Maybe you grew up in a home where praise was scarce, where you learned that waiting for someone else to tell you that you were good enough meant waiting forever. So you stopped waiting. Or maybe you grew up watching validation being used as control, affection given and withdrawn based on performance, love that came with conditions. You learned that external approval was unreliable, that it could vanish at any moment, so you built something more stable inside yourself. Or perhaps you were just naturally introspective, a child who spent hours alone, building worlds in your head, creating your own sense of meaning without needing an audience. Over time, this became your default. You learned to check in with yourself first, to ask, does this feel true? Does this align with who I am? Does this matter to me? And even now, in adulthood, that's still the first question you ask. Not, what will they think? But what do I think? Here's what neuroscientists discovered. The brain has two primary systems for evaluating self-worth. One is externally driven, lighting up when we receive social rewards like praise, likes, or approval. The other is internally driven, activating when we align with our own values and standards. Dr. Jamil Zaki at Stanford found that people with strong internal evaluation systems show less activity in the brain's reward centers when receiving external praise. Not because they're broken, but because their brains have learned to generate validation internally. This isn't numbness, it's self-sufficiency. Because the human brain evolved in small tribes where social approval was survival. Being cast out meant death. But your brain learned something different. It learned that the most reliable source of stability isn't out there. It's in here. We live in a world that runs on external validation. Every platform is designed to give you numbers, likes, followers, shares, comments. Your ancestors had maybe 50 people whose opinions mattered. You have thousands, all weighing in constantly. Modern society tells us that visibility equals value. that if people aren't celebrating you, you must not be doing anything worth celebrating. You can do meaningful work in silence and be told you're wasting your time because no one's watching. You can know your own worth and be called arrogant because you don't constantly seek reassurance. The culture rewards people who perform their achievements, who announce their wins, who need the crowd to confirm what they've done. And when you don't need that, people don't know what to make of you. Behind every person who doesn't need validation is a particular kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being unseen, the loneliness of being misunderstood. People think you don't care, that their praise doesn't matter, that you're above needing connection. But that's not it. You're not above needing connection. You just don't need applause. There's also this. Sometimes not needing validation becomes its own form of isolation. Because when you don't need people to affirm you, you can forget to let them in at all. You can become so self-sufficient that you stop sharing the parts of yourself that are uncertain, vulnerable, still forming. Not because you're cold, because you've learned that needing nothing from others is safer than needing something and being disappointed. There's something that shifts when you stop measuring yourself by external metrics. When you realize that praise doesn't make you more valuable and criticism doesn't make you less. You're not rejecting kindness. You're just not dependent on it. Maybe that's not detachment. Maybe that's freedom. People who don't need constant validation often make the most trustworthy witnesses because they're not performing for anyone. They're not shaping their truth to get a reaction. They say what they see, what they know, what feels honest, even if no one claps. Perhaps the goal isn't to stop caring what others think. It's to care more about what you think than what they think. To let external feedback inform you without defining you. What if you could receive a compliment and simply say thank you? Not because you needed it, but because someone offered it. What if you could hear criticism and consider it without collapsing or defending? Not because you're above emotion, but because you've built something solid enough inside that the winds from outside can't topple it. That's not arrogance. That's groundedness. And groundedness doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't fracture. So when you stand in that room full of people celebrating you and feel steady, you're not cold. You're someone who learned early that the most reliable source of worth isn't in the eyes of others. It's in the quiet, knowing you carry with you when the room empties and you're alone again. You may never be the person who needs constant reassurance, who posts every achievement, who craves the spotlight. And that's okay, because there will come a day when someone asks you how you stay so calm, how you keep going even when no one's watching. And you'll realize that all those years of not needing applause taught you something invaluable. How to trust yourself. You'll meet people who are exhausted from performing, from needing proof every single day that they matter. And you'll understand that what you have, this quiet self-possession, is rare. Not because you're better, but because you're free. Free from the endless cycle of seeking and receiving and needing more. Free to do meaningful work whether anyone notices or not. Free to be yourself even when the crowd isn't cheering. One day, someone will tell you